Here's the first graph that we need to make. It's a graph showing the lifespans of fruit flies. We've got a sample of ages of fruit flies given to us here in this block, and the first step is to put these into a group frequency table. The layout shown below, and we need to use intervals of 10 days, and the first group is given to us as 0 to 9 days, and that's put into the table here as well. So the first thing with a group frequency table is to put those intervals in. So the first one is 0 to 9, then the next one follows on from that, which will be 10 to 19. So that's a range of 10 that follows on where this one left off. We can't start at 9, you can't do 9 to 18, because then if you have an age of 9, does it go in this column or this column? There's a conflict there, so it needs to be one up from the previous. This will be 10 to 19, then we'll have 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and so on. Then we look through this and we count how many are in the 0 to 9 range. So you look through column by column, there's 1, 2, I think that's it. So 2 would go in the first column, and then we look in the next one, which would be 10 to 19, count how many are there. There's 1, 2, 3, and so on. Count all the way through, and you put those in there. So this is the table that I've made. I've got lifespans in the first column here. I've put them in columns rather than rows, like in this, because Google Spreadsheets won't give me the right sort of graph if I do it the other way for some reason. So that's why I've done it this way. And here are my frequencies, which I've gone through and counted which ones are in which range and put them into this column here. Now, if I'm going to print from Google Spreadsheets, I'll need to make sure that when it prints out, this looks like a proper table. So I'm going to select all of those values and add some borders around them. So it's clear now that that's a table. Now let's produce a graph. So I'm going to select the data and go to the Insert menu and insert a chart. The first one here is what I want. It's a bar chart or column chart here, and the only thing is that the bars or the columns, they're not touching. So the type of graph I need is actually a histogram, and if I start with this setting, I can actually make it into a histogram in the next step. But the bars must touch, that's the key thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to chart types now, and I can actually use this one that's called a stepped area chart, and now you can see the bars are touching, and that's good. And we've got our labels in there, these are the lifespan labels. So good, we've got our graph generally. I'm just going to do a little more customization to it. Give it a title. Lifespan of fruit flies. And now this is the customize options for the horizontal axis. That's this one here. So the title here is lifespan, and I was given a unit, so I must use the unit here, lifespan in days. And now I can change this to the left vertical. If I needed to change this, then this is where I do it. I don't need to change it, that's fine. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I can add some more grid lines in here now. It's not as absolutely essential for this type of graph, but we can do that if we want. So I could change to 6 major grid lines. You can now see it's going up in 3s. Let's go up in 2s. So if I change it to 7, then that's going up in 2s. That's good. And one other thing I can do here is to make the area a little darker. I can change that to 70%, You could make it 100% if you wanted to, but this is fine. So that graph looks good. One more thing actually, which is to remove the legend. If I can, not sure where there is the legend option here. None. We don't need a legend. That's good. Now we can insert that graph. There's the graph. I'm going to get rid of that image. That's a good graph there. You can resize this as well to take up a bit more room in there. Okay, that graph is good to go. For better printing, we could always move this to its own tab or own sheet. So yeah, that's the options, drop down menu there, move to own sheet. Now it's nice and big. When I print it off, it'll take up the whole page, nice and clear. This is the data that I'll be using for task 2. The original preliminary was using the composition of air. These are the gases in air, but I'm not going to use those because Google spreadsheets aren't quite up to the displaying these very small numbers correctly on a pie chart, so I won't be using those. I've made up some new data here which I will be using for producing this graph. Now I've got some different sources of income here, and these are percentages. You can see that I've put the borders around the data so that when it prints off we can see that this is a table. Just to let you know why I've added borders, these grid lines that are shown here when you're actually in the spreadsheet view aren't printed. So that's why when you actually have data you should put a border around them, or some way of making it clear that you've got a table there. Also, you'll notice I'm working on a separate tab here, a separate worksheet. This is the data from task 1. You can put all the data on one sheet if you wanted to do that, so that you can print them all off on one sheet. You can do that, but just make sure you know which set of data belongs where, and use headings to make sure it's clear to a reader what's what. Right, as you can see, I have some data missing from my table. These are percentages, and these should all add up to 100%. So I need to add these up and calculate 100 minus the sum of these to work out what value goes in here. So I've got 35 plus 15, that's 50, plus that's 70, 80, 85. So 100 minus 85 is 15, so I need to put that in there. Right, now these all add up to 100. I can now plot them, select the data, and same as we did previously, insert menu, chart. And you can see that we've already got a pie chart selected for us. When you're showing composition of something or fractions or different sources that add up to 100%, you should use a pie chart. So we don't need to go to this chart types here. You can see it's all labelled and each one is indicated here as to what it is. If we go to customization, we want to give this a title. I'll call it Sources of Household Income. The legend, you can leave it like this, shown on the right, or you could use the labelled. Then each one is labelled like that, so it's pointing to the relevant quadrant. Or you can leave it like that, that's equally fine. Yeah, that looks all fine. Now, you'll want to go through these and change the colours if you're printing in black and white. If you're printing in black and white and not in colour, then some of these colours, when printed off in black and white, will actually look similar. So it won't be clear which one is salary, which one is welfare, and so on. So for salary, we're going to change that to black, then change the welfare one to this type of grey. So when these are printed off, they'll actually look different. Just working my way down, changing the colours. And the last one. Maybe I'll make that a bit darker actually. There we go. Okay, there's my graph. So that's good. And you can move that to separate sheet like before if you wanted to print it off from Excel. Of course, the other thing you can do is select your data as a table, copy and paste it into a Word document or some other word processor, and you can do the same with your graphs as well. Right, so that's number 2 done. This is the third set of data, which is for voltage across and current through a metal wire. So we've got our data here, and I'll now produce a graph, and the graph will need to show markers that display for the data points, and we will also need to add a line of best fit through the points. Now, when you're doing the final task, you'll actually need to hand draw those lines of best fit, because that's a skill that we'll assess you on. But I'll show you how it can be done with a spreadsheet program like Google Sheets or Excel. We'll select the data, data's all okay, and insert chart. Right, I'm going to go for this option here. It's got the data points, but there's no line. So this one here is showing one for current and one for voltage, which is not appropriate. And also it doesn't have the data points. I don't want these lines here because these are not lines of best fit, this is dot to dot. And in physics we don't do dot to dot lines. The reason I'm choosing a line graph though is voltage and current are related to each other. So a line graph will show us that relationship, whereas a bar chart is more for comparing sets of data that are not necessarily related to each other. So that's why I'm choosing this line chart here. Okay, you can see that the axes titles will be put in for us, that's fine. I don't think there's anything to change here, so I'll just go straight to customization, and I'll put in here current voltage for a metal wire. Take off the legend. The legend doesn't supply any useful information, that's why I'm getting rid of all of them. Okay, that's fine. The axes, now I want some more grid lines here, so I will add some more here. These going up in 30, so I definitely want some more of those. And these ones are, sorry, I'm doing the voltage axis here, which is actually the x-axis, so that's looking okay, that number. And you can add some minor grid lines as well. So if I add in 5, each one is now 0.2. Yeah, that's probably enough. Now I'll change this to the vertical axis, that's the current, and here I will change the, notice as well I've got the units in brackets, let's pick those up from the spreadsheet itself because they're in there, but you should always make sure you've got those. Okay, let's add some more major grid lines here, those are going up in 20s, that's a good number to go up in, well, better than 30s or 60s or anything like that. And those grid lines we go up in 2s. Well, no, it's 4s actually. But that looks like it's possibly enough detail. You could add more as well if you wanted to. Right, I'm going to leave it at 5 just so it's not so crowded. I can always change that later on. Now, those big blobs are not very helpful. Let's go to these X marks, that's better. Yeah, those look okay. I'm going to change these to black so that they show up nice and clear. Right, we can add our trend line here also. We need to choose a linear because we want a line of best fit, a straight line of best fit. There we go. And change the opacity to 100%. Make it a thinner line, that's better, more accurate. Okay, that looks good. Insert, and there's our graph there. And you can, on these ones, you should be able to resize the graph so it uses up more of the space available. Yeah, that's better. Okay, good. So there's our graph there. Whoops. There we go. And you can see now actually those grid lines are a bit more spread out, so we could add some more. From the drop down menu, choose Advanced Edit, and you get back to the window we had before. And now if I'm editing the horizontal here, I'll change this to 10, and on the vertical as well, change that to 10. There we go. So that's our straight line graph for current and voltage. We're on task 4 now, where we have to plot the rate of decay of a radioactive substance. Now you can see in the data I've gone from rows to columns again. Also, there's one thing missing in my data at the moment, which is the unit for the header row. If we look in the original, the unit is seconds to the power of -1, and we need to get that superscript. That's what it's called when you have a smaller number on a higher baseline than not the rest of the text. It's called a superscript. We need to get that right if we're going to get assessed correctly. So now this is, as I've been making this video, there have been a couple of points where Google Sheets have really let me down. I'm a big advocate of using Google Sheets as opposed to Excel, but unfortunately Google Sheets can't do superscripts. So what you'll need to do here is use some symbols, which is less than ideal, but you'll need to find some symbols somewhere. You can use my spreadsheet to copy the symbols if you need it, and I can also show you how to get symbols elsewhere. But if you are using Excel, then you can ask me instructions how to do superscripts there. Now, if we go into the cell here, the S is just regular, and then to get a -1, I'm going to use a couple of symbols from my symbol picker, which is built into my Mac. So that'll do for my minus, and there's the 1. So you don't need to know how I did that. I will show you how to do those superscripts if you're not sure. Okay, now that's good. Let's plot our graph again. This is going to be similar to the one we did for current and voltage. Remember this, except we're not going to have a straight line. You're going to see that we're going to have a curve this time. So let's get our graph first. Right, this is the one that I want. It's, again, the two sets of data are related, so it's a line graph that I need, but it's just going to have a curve, so no bars or pie charts or anything else. This is the one that I want. I just need to customize it a bit. Go to the customization options. Okay, got that. Turn the legend off. This looks okay. I'll probably add in some more grid lines. So I think we're on horizontal here. Let's add in 7. See what you said. No, scale up to 15. So that's also good. 12s. Just keep changing it until you get what you want. Yeah, let's scale up in 10. So that's good. And we can add 5 of those, or 10 of those even. Each line then is 1. Yeah, that's good. Change to the vertical axis here. Those are going up in 1500s, so let's add some more of those in. You can see it's picked up the title and the unit there, so that's fine. We're on, what are we on at the moment? 5, so let's go to 7. So we're going up in thousands. Yeah, that's good. And we could go up in tens there, so each line is 100. If you wanted to change the colour, you can change the colour here. So let's change to darker lines, then they'll show up more clearly. This appears to be related to the major grid lines, but you can change it if you want. Okay, change these to black so they show up better, and we want these crosses. That looks nice and clear, that's fine. And the trend line, we're going to add an exponential trend line because it's a curve, not the linear one as we did before. So that's what we want. That looks good. Oh yeah, I didn't change the colour of the trend line, so I'm going to change that now. Click the drop down menu, Advanced Edit. Scroll to the bottom. 100%. You could make it a grey line if you wanted, so it wasn't so stark. Change it to 1. Update. Let's resize the graph a bit if I can. Get somewhere. Just trying to click somewhere where I can actually. It's not having it though. Let's see if I can zoom in and get a bit. I think if I'm not selecting a space, there we are. Oops. There we go. Got those resize options now, so that's using making better use of the space. Okay, so that's my 4th graph done now. Get rid of that. And that's my trend line, the exponential. So that's giving me a curve. Again, if you're doing the assessed task, you'll actually need to draw that yourself. That's my 4th graph. Don't forget, we can always move that to its own sheet if we want to have it nice and big for good printing direct from Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you're using. This is an additional task that I've made for 6.4 practice so that I can show you one extra thing that spreadsheets can do to make life a bit easier. I've got time and distance data here and I want to work out the speeds for all of those data. You could go through and calculate each one individually. The speed is distance divided by time, so you could do 35 divided by 10 equals 110 divided by 20 equals. You could work those all out on a calculator, but that would take quite a while, especially if you had lots and lots of data to do that for. Spreadsheets can do the calculation, and you can duplicate the calculation easily as well. So let me show you that first. Now I've put the first 0 in here because if you divide by 0 you'll get an error. So I've just left that as 0. But here I'm going to type equals. Now the spreadsheet understands I'm about to do a calculation here. So anything I do next, it will put into the calculation. I want to do distance divided by time. So this is the corresponding distance for this speed. So click on there, and you can put in it's put in the cell reference C4. That's column C, row 4. That cell there, that's also highlighted for me. Then divide, and I'll click the time value that corresponds with that distance. That's in B4, so it's put C4 divided by B4. Hit enter, and there we go, it's done the calculation for me. And you could go through and type each of those individually if you wanted to, but spreadsheets make it easy to duplicate equations. This block here at the bottom of the cell, if you hover over that, the cursor will turn into a crosshair. Now if I click and drag down, it will now duplicate that equation for each of these rows. So this one has now done 750 divided by 50, which is column C8 divided by, cell C8 divided by B8. If I click to go into this one, you can see what it's done there. So that makes your life a bit easier. I was having a bit of difficulty getting a graph plotted with my columns separated like this, so I've duplicated the data into 2 columns here. I wouldn't print this off in addition to these to make my table, but just for the purposes of making the graph, and you should feel free to do things like that as well, just to get the results you need. I'm going to insert my chart now, and one of the options is just showing the plots. That's exactly what I want. Now I'll go to the customization. I've got time on the x-axis, speed up there, that's fine. Okay, you can add in the grid lines now, so I'll add in some more. Those go up in 5, so those are okay actually. Oh, so this is the, that's going up in 20, so I will increase the number there. These going up in 10s, and the minor ones, those are fine. Just change this to the vertical. Those are okay, going up in 5s, and that is now, yep, that looks okay. Change these to black, and that's okay, the crosses. And this is another straight line graph, so I'll change that to linear. Tweak the line. Oh, I haven't got rid of the legend. There we go. That's my graph. So I wouldn't print that as my table. I'd print the original one as my table. This is fine. There you go, so that's my last graph there.